After getting pulled into a marriage of convenience novel, I assumed I was the main character because the protagonist had the same name as me. So I immediately made my move on the female lead, who hadn't fallen for me yet. I was relentless, using every trick in the book until I finally won her over. As for her coldness and disgust, I just brushed it off as the usual games couples play. Then one day, the system found me. "You're not the main character," it said. "You're just a minor side character, cannon fodder. The plot is about to correct itself. The female lead is destined to fall in love with the real protagonist, and you will be cast aside. If you stay with her, your family will be destroyed." I didn't believe it at first, but I had spent 3 years carefully managing her gastritis, making sure it never flared up. When I saw it return because she took a drink for the real main character, I finally understood. All her supposed dislike for me, it had all been real. Staring at my own pale face in the full-length mirror, I called out to the system. "When I leave this world in 10 days, I asked, can my body die in front of her?" The system didn't object to my request. I said nothing more, washed up, and went to bed. In the middle of the night, I felt Chloe lie down next to me, her arms wrapping around my waist from behind as she drifted off to sleep. I heard her let out the faintest sigh. "Ethan," she whispered, "what will it take for you to believe there's nothing going on between me and him?" I didn't answer, just kept pretending to be asleep. 3 days before my departure, at 7 in the evening, I sat in the study and wrote 2 letters. One was for my family, the Hayes, and the other was for Chloe. When she saw the letters, Chloe's gaze turned ice cold. "Ethan, if you're upset about something, just say it. Don't pull this nonsense about wanting a divorce again. You don't like Julian Croft, so I transferred him to another department. What more do you want?" I froze. Her icy stare reminded me of the Chloe from before we were married, the one who looked at me with nothing but coldness and disgust. A sudden realization hit me, and I couldn't stop myself from asking, "Chloe, why did you agree to marry me?" Chloe clearly wasn't expecting the question. After a moment of silence, her usual cool voice replied, "You saved my life in that car crash. I'm repaying the debt with this marriage. It's a fair trade." My heart clenched. Repaying a debt? Fair? So this marriage, which I thought was a happy one, was nothing more than a business transaction to her. I looked at her. "So the only reason you won't divorce me is because you don't want to go back on your word? Is that it?" Hearing this, Chloe's expression darkened. "That's not." But before she could finish, her phone rang, cutting her off. She glanced at the screen and walked out onto the balcony. With her gone, I felt myself calming down. What was the point? Anyway, I was leaving soon. Her answer didn't matter anymore. I glanced at her silhouette on the balcony and left the bedroom. Downstairs in the living room, the men I'd hired to dispose of our wedding photos were waiting. One of the workers asked me, looking confused, "Mr. Hayes, are you sure you want all of these destroyed? Like, thrown out with the trash?" I nodded. "Yes. Thank you for taking care of it." Soon, they were gone, taking several boxes of my wedding photos with Chloe with them. Without a word to her, I walked out and drove to my parents' house. I was about to go back to my own world. I needed to say goodbye. As I arrived, Chloe was on the phone with her mother. I could hear her mother's frantic voice through the receiver. "Chloe, your grandmother is critically ill. She's been rushed to the emergency room. Get to the hospital now." We didn't waste any time and rushed over. By the time we got to the hospital, her grandmother had been moved to a regular room to recover. That's when I saw that Julian Croft was already there, sitting by her bedside. Her grandmother was clutching Julian's hand tightly. The moment she saw Chloe, she used all her remaining strength to press their hands together. "Chloe," she rasped, "Grandma can see that Julian is the only one worthy of you. Promise me you'll be with him, please? Otherwise, I won't be able to die in peace." Chloe's expression hardened, but she said nothing. The rest of her family, however, started chiming in. "Just agree, Chloe. You only married him out of obligation. It's time you found your own happiness." I stood in the corner of the room, my heart feeling like it had been plunged into ice. How absurd. My wife's entire family was trying to convince her to leave me for another man, right in front of me. Then, through the small crowd, I saw Chloe take Julian's hand and hold it tight. Watching them laugh and joke together, I slipped out of the room alone and went home. Chloe didn't get back until the middle of the night. I was half asleep when she wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight. "Don't push me away, Ethan," she said softly. "I know you're angry, but please let me explain." Her voice was muffled, and I could hear a trace of panic in it. I didn't push her away or turn to face her. The truth was, they were all right. Our relationship had been a mistake from the start. From the moment I entered this novel and fell for Chloe, it was all one giant error. I was wrong to think I was the hero, wrong to mistake her sense of duty for love. and now that mistake was finally about to be corrected. But Chloe insisted, "It's not a mistake. Ethan, our marriage is not a mistake. I only said those things at the hospital to give my grandmother peace of mind. Once she's discharged, this whole charade will be over. Just give me a little time to sort things out, okay? We'll go back to the way we were, I promise." She held me so tightly, as if she were genuinely terrified of losing me. Too bad. I glanced at the system's interface. Time remaining until host's death: 20 hours, 29 minutes, 58 seconds. My time was up. Finally, I spoke softly. "Chloe, can you spend tomorrow with me?" "The entire day." Chloe agreed. "Okay, I'll clear my schedule. I'll spend the whole day with you." I let her hold me, my heart already numb. As she made her earnest promises, I slowly drifted off to sleep. When I opened my eyes, it was the next morning. Chloe and I went out for a meal, saw a movie, and spent the day on a date completely uninterrupted. At 9 p.m., with only 3 hours left until my death, I was in the wine cellar picking out a bottle of red when I got a text from Julian Croft. It read, "Ethan, believe it or not, I can take her from you with a single phone call." I stared at the message and found myself asking the system, "This is your novel's hero? I'm still legally Chloe's husband, yet he sends me brazen, provocative texts like this all the time." The system remained silent, offering no response. I didn't reply to Julian, but when I got back to the living room, I saw Chloe putting on her coat, ready to leave. "Julian says someone is following him," she explained. "I have to go help." So this was his excuse to pull her away from me. It sounded so absurd it was almost funny. A grown man being followed, calling a woman for help. I called out to her. "Did you forget? You promised you'd spend the entire day with me." Chloe frowned. "I've been with you all day. Do these last 3 hours really matter that much? Don't be difficult. I'll be back as soon as I'm sure he's safe." With that, she turned and walked out the door without a moment's hesitation, giving me no chance to reply. The door slammed shut. I looked down at the bottle of wine in my hand and let out a bitter laugh. "Chloe, a whole day means a whole day. A minute short, a second short doesn't count." I opened the wine and drank it alone, glass after glass. Late into the night, Chloe still hadn't come back. I lay down on the bed, slowly closed my eyes, and prepared to die. Soon, the system's voice echoed in my mind again. "World portal construction complete. Commencing death countdown." In that final moment, I felt a peace I had never known before. At the stroke of midnight, my soul slowly drifted out of my body. Just then, the bedroom door opened. Chloe was back. I watched as she walked to the bed, tucked the covers around me, and then lay down beside my corpse. Her movements were so gentle and careful, but if she had only looked a little closer, she would have seen that I wasn't breathing anymore. Transporting host to the real world. Transport successful. As the system's voice faded, my soul vanished completely from that world. "Chloe, you'll never find me now." The next morning, the alarm blared through the quiet bedroom. When Chloe woke up, she realized the man beside her was in the exact same position as the night before. He hadn't moved an inch. Her brow furrowed, and her heart sank for a reason she couldn't explain. By this time, he was usually already up and making her breakfast. After a moment's thought, she spoke. "Ethan, I know you're awake. Last night was an emergency. Please don't give me the silent treatment." As she spoke, she reached out to touch me. But just then, her phone rang, and she answered it instead. Julian Croft's voice came through the speaker. "Chloe, I'm at the hospital all alone. Can you come be with me?" Chloe looked at her husband lying beside her and frowned. But a promise she'd made to Julian's sister, Tessa, came to mind, and she got up to put on her coat. She glanced at the still figure on the bed and sighed. "I'll just be a little while and then I'll be right back. We'll talk properly then." Without waiting for a response, she turned and left. Chloe arrived at the hospital room to find Julian leaning against his pillows, a look of pure loneliness on his face. When he saw her in the doorway, his eyes lit up and he sat up straight. "Chloe, you came." Chloe just hummed in acknowledgement and sat in the chair beside his bed. "How did the examination go?" The night before, after getting Julian's frantic call, she had immediately called the police and rushed to his location. The older woman who had been harassing him had gotten angry when Chloe showed up and had shoved Julian hard as she fled. Julian gave a weak smile. "It's all sorted out. The doctor said I have a mild concussion and need to stay for observation for a day. I should be able to go home tomorrow." He took her hand. "Chloe, why did you leave last night?" Chloe frowned, pulling her hand away. "I sent my assistant to help you, didn't I?" she said, a hint of annoyance in her voice. Julian looked taken aback. He lowered his head, his voice turning raspy. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a bother. My sister gets back around noon. Could you just stay with me until then? Chloe was silent for a moment before sitting back down. She checked her phone. It was already 8 in the morning. It was only for a few hours, it would be fine. And yet, the image of her husband's unnaturally still form as she left kept flashing in her mind, filling her with a strange sense of dread. She waited until 11, when Tessa Croft finally appeared in the doorway, looking worried. She patted Chloe's shoulder. Thank you so much for everything. I can take it from here. Chloe felt a burden lift from her shoulders and turned to leave. She'd only taken a few steps when she realized she'd left her phone behind. As she walked back to the doorway, she heard Julian's surprised voice from inside. Tessa, where did Chloe go? She left, Tessa said, her tone sharp. I'm taking you home later. You're not to go to the office for a few days. Just rest. I'll let Chloe know. But I want Chloe to stay with me, Julian whined. Chloe's brow twitched. Tessa's furious voice came next. Stay with you? Julian, don't think for a second I don't know what's on your mind. Chloe is a married woman. You will not be some homewrecker, or I swear I will disown you. But Tessa, Julian said, his voice full of hurt, you know I've been in love with her for years. Chloe's frown deepened. She walked into the room without a word, grabbed her phone, and, ignoring their shocked expressions, turned and walked out as if she hadn't heard a thing. She had to get home and explain things to Ethan. If she had known Julian only joined her company because he had a crush on her, she never would have hired him. There was no point dwelling on it now. She just had to get him transferred as soon as possible. Thinking back on how hostile Ethan had been toward Julian lately, she gave a wry smile. It seemed her husband had seen right through him from the start. On the way home, she got stuck in a massive traffic jam, her car at a standstill. A glance at her watch told her it was already noon. She picked up her phone to call her husband, but it just rang and rang with no answer. Chloe bit her lip, a flicker of panic in her eyes as she remembered his strange behavior the day before. He wasn't picking up. He must still be angry with her. When she finally got home, she found the bedroom door was still shut, and that feeling of unease intensified. She hurried over and turned the handle. The room was pitch black, the curtains drawn just as she'd left them. In the dim light filtering in from the hall, she could make out the shape of her husband on the bed. She stood in the doorway and called out tentatively, "Ethan." The figure on the bed didn't move. Chloe frowned and began to apologize to the silent room. "I know you're angry with me, but please let me explain. I have absolutely no feelings for Julian Croft. I was only looking out for him because of his sister. I just found out today at the hospital that he has feelings for me. You saw it all along, didn't you? You were right to be wary of him. I was the one who was blind. I promise. I'll have him transferred out of the company. And didn't you say you wanted to go to the Maldives? As soon as things settle down at work, we'll go. When we get back, we can both get checkups, and if everything looks good, we can start trying for a baby. That would make my mother and grandmother happy, and maybe they'd finally get off your back." Chloe continued to speak, offering more apologies and promises, but the man on the bed remained completely still. "Ethan, you can be angry with me, but please don't ignore me." She had poured her heart out, and still, he hadn't said a word. Chloe fell silent, a strange, cold feeling creeping over her. She started to walk toward the bed, but her phone rang again. It was her assistant, her voice frantic. "Ms. Sterling, there's a huge problem with the Apex Industries contract." Chloe's expression immediately turned serious. She gave her husband one last look, sighed, and said, "I'll have Maria make you something to eat. You can have it when you feel up to it. I have to go to the office, but I'll be back early today." With that, she turned and hurried out. At the office, Chloe dove straight into the problematic files. But for some reason, a persistent anxiety gnawed at her, a nagging feeling that something terrible was about to happen. She tried to focus on the documents, but her eyes kept darting to her phone. It was strange. Why hadn't Ethan texted her? Was he still that angry? Finally, she put the papers down and called the housekeeper. "Maria, is Ethan up yet?" It was nearly afternoon, and Ethan had never, ever slept this late. Maria's voice was filled with confusion. "No, ma'am. Do you think he might be sick?" He didn't answer when I called to him either. Chloe froze, remembering how he had been just as unresponsive that morning. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. "Maria," she said, her voice sharp, "go into the bedroom and check on him again." "Right away, Miss Sterling," Maria replied. Just then, her assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Sterling, the meeting is about to start." Chloe had no choice but to hang up. She grabbed her files and followed her assistant into the conference room. "I had no idea," she began, her voice grave, "that management in this company had become so lax, effective immediately." Halfway through the meeting, a shrill ringtone shattered the tense atmosphere. Forgetting her lecture, Chloe snatched her phone. She had intentionally left the ringer on just in case. Seeing it was Maria calling, her heart leaped into her throat as she swiped to answer. Maria's panicked voice screamed from the speaker. "Ms. Sterling, this Mr. Hayes. I don't think he's breathing." Chloe's body went rigid, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Maria, what are you talking about?" she yelled into the phone. "That's impossible." She couldn't even bring herself to say the word. Just last night, Ethan had been sleeping beside her, perfectly fine. How could he not be breathing? But Maria's voice was trembling with terror. "It's true, Ms. Sterling. His body, it's already gone stiff." Chloe's face went white. She shot up from her chair and sprinted out of the conference room. In the car, she gripped the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road, muttering, "It can't be true. I don't believe it. When I get home, I'm going to have a serious talk with Maria." She hit every single red light on the way, and she slammed her fist against the steering wheel in frustration. When she finally pulled up to the house, she found it surrounded by police cars and an ambulance. Her face drained of color. She ran past the police tape and up to the bedroom. The room was filled with police officers and paramedics, all crowded around the bed. Chloe pushed her way to the bedside and rounded on the terrified housekeeper. "Who told you to call the police?" she screamed. "Ethan is fine." A paramedic beside her spoke gently. "Ma'am, I am so sorry for your loss. Please try to stay calm." But Chloe wasn't listening. When she saw them about to place her husband in a body bag, her eyes went red with fury and she threw herself forward. "Don't touch him," she shrieked. "Ethan isn't dead. What do you think you're doing?" He was in the exact same position she had left him in, the covers still tucked around him. But the moment her fingers touched his skin, she felt the deathly cold. She could see the telltale purple mottling of livor mortis on his skin. When a paramedic gently lifted his eyelid, she saw his pupil, fixed and dilated. Something shattered inside her mind. Her voice trembled uncontrollably. "Ethan, stop playing games with me. You're just trying to scare me, aren't you? You're punishing me for leaving last night. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please don't scare me like this. Open your eyes." With a trembling hand, Chloe placed her fingers under his nose. Just as Maria had said, there was nothing, not a single breath. The tears finally broke free, and a sharp pain, like 1,000 needles, stabbed at her heart, spreading through her entire body. She grabbed his hand from under the blanket, her own hand shaking, and broke down into sobs. "Ethan, I'm back now. I'm here. Please, I'm begging you. Just open your eyes and look at me." A police officer who had been watching stepped forward. "Ma'am, can you tell me where you were at midnight last night?" Chloe's voice caught in her throat. "I was right here," she said hoarsely, "sleeping next to him." The officer looked at her for a moment, a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Ma'am," he said gently, "the coroner puts your husband's time of death at exactly midnight." Chloe's mind went completely blank, her lips trembling. That meant, when she came home last night, when she lay down beside him, he was already gone, and she never even knew. The officer continued, "The medical examiner noted some cloudy, reddish marks on the body, which is consistent with vascular congestion following a myocardial infarction. The signs point to sudden cardiac death. Ma'am, would you like to request an autopsy?" Chloe stared blankly at the officer. She couldn't understand how a perfectly healthy person could just die. Then, his words from 2 nights ago echoed in her mind. "I'm going to die." It was as if he had known. Her heart lurched, and a fresh wave of pain washed over her. A paramedic, noticing her distress, quickly came to her side. "I know this is a shock, ma'am, but please try to breathe." It took a long moment for Chloe to compose herself. "The autopsy," she said to the officer. "I'll have to think about it." She desperately wanted to know why he had died, but an autopsy meant cutting him open. He had always been so afraid of pain. She couldn't bear the thought of him being hurt, not even now. When the Hayes family heard the news, they rushed to the hospital. Upon seeing the pale, still body on the gurney, Ethan's mother collapsed to the floor, and his father doubled over, his face a mask of grief. His sister, Natalie, her eyes instantly turning red, slapped Chloe hard across the face. "Chloe Sterling," she spat, her face pale with rage. "You promised you would take care of him. Is this what you call taking care of him?" His mother, tears streaming down her face, scrambled up from the floor and began pounding on Chloe's chest with her fists. "You promised," she sobbed. "You promised you would look after my boy." Chloe stood there, tears welling in her own eyes, and took the blows and the insults without a word. After what felt like an eternity, his mother and sister finally exhausted themselves and fell silent. His mother just stood there, wiping her tears, saying nothing. It was only then that Chloe spoke, her voice low and raspy. "Should we Request an autopsy? Natalie gritted her teeth. She turned to her silent parents. Mom, Dad, she said urgently, don't you want to know why he died? After a long pause, his father finally managed a single word. Yes. The autopsy results came back 3 days later. In the hospital, Chloe stared silently at the report in her hands as the doctor spoke. Mr. Ethan Hayes' cause of death was sudden cardiac arrest resulting from an acute myocardial infarction. The time of death was the evening of April 1st. It all pointed to a tragic accident, but Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. As she watched her husband's body slide into the cremation chamber, a light went out in Chloe's eyes. The person she loved most in this world was gone forever. After leaving the crematorium, Chloe went home alone. The house felt vast and empty, and a wave of despair washed over her. She saw him everywhere, in every room. Just then, her phone rang. She slowly pulled it from her pocket and saw Julian Croft's name on the screen. With a frown, she immediately blocked his number. She looked around the empty house one more time before heading upstairs. In the study, she sat down at his desk and her eyes fell on the letter he had written to her. She paused, then slowly unfolded it. When she had first seen it, she had been furious, thinking it was just another one of his dramatic gestures. Now it was all she had left of him. The words on the page swam before her eyes. Chloe, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know my death might seem sudden to you, but for me it was expected. Please forgive me for leaving without a proper goodbye. I want you to be happy for the rest of your life. Don't let my death weigh you down. There are so many things I want to say to you, but I don't know where to begin. Without me around, you have to remember to eat properly. I didn't spend all that time getting your stomach healthy again just for you to mess it all up. It's a shame I couldn't keep the vows I made at our wedding, that I can't grow old with you, but I still want you to be happy. I'm not selfish. I don't want you to mourn me forever. If you meet someone right for you, you should be with them. But please, don't forget to look after my family. If you do, I'll come back to haunt you. Tears streamed down Chloe's face, soaking the letter. She gasped for air, her heart aching with a pain beyond words. Ethan, without you, who am I supposed to grow old with? The next day, Chloe forced herself to go to the county clerk's office with all the necessary paperwork to file his death certificate. When the clerk handed her the thin, officially stamped piece of paper, the tears came flooding back. A death certificate. Ethan, we promised we'd grow old together. Why did you leave me first? After a long while, Chloe finally pulled herself together and drove home. But when she arrived, she found an unwelcome visitor waiting at her gate. Julian Croft approached her, his face etched with concern, and reached for her hand. Chloe, please don't be sad. Even though Ethan is gone, you still have me. Chloe snatched her hand away in disgust and shoved him back. Don't you ever, she said, her voice like ice, show your face to me again. Julian looked up, stunned, just in time to see the front door slam shut, leaving him standing alone outside. It was my third day back in the real world. No time had passed here at all. Everything that had happened in the novel felt like a long, complicated dream. I spent the first day back just lying in bed. On the second day, I found my best friend, Leo, and borrowed the novel from him. I spent the entire day reading it. I finally learned the title, something like The Ice Queen's Darling, and I finally saw how it was supposed to end. In the story, Chloe and Julian have twins, a boy and a girl, and live happily ever after. I figured that back in the novel, Chloe would eventually forget me and end up with Julian, just like the story said. Late that night, I closed the book, a sense of release washing over me. It was for the best. It was like falling in love with a fictional character. In the end, it was all for nothing, leaving not a single trace behind. On the third day, I started job hunting and threw myself back into my career. After all, in this world, I didn't have a wealthy family or a powerful CEO for a wife. I had to make my own way. A month flew by. During lunch in the company cafeteria, I overheard my coworkers buzzing with some news. Did you guys hear? One of them said. The company's been bought out. For real? Where'd you hear that? It's all over the news. How could you miss it? Listening to them, I felt a little out of the loop. I'd been so focused on getting settled in my new job that I hadn't paid attention to anything else. After lunch, we all headed back to our desks. At 2 o'clock, our manager walked in with a few people in suits. Everyone, can I have your attention, please? He said, his voice serious. I have an announcement. Everyone looked up. As I turned to look, the pen I was holding slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. Our manager continued, the woman standing behind me is our company's new CEO. I want you all to make sure you know who she is. I bent down to pick up my pen, and when I looked up, my eyes met a pair that were hauntingly familiar. My own eyes widened in shock, and I shot to my feet. Chloe? What was she doing here? She just stared at me silently, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if she was real, if she was the same woman from the novel. When I finally tore my gaze away from her, I realized the entire office had gone silent. Everyone was staring at me. My manager sighed. "Ethan, I know our new CEO is beautiful, but you don't have to stare." My face flushed red, and I quickly sat back down. The moment the manager led her out of the office, the room erupted in hushed whispers. The guy at the desk next to mine nudged me. "Ethan, I never knew you were so easily starstruck." I just waved it off. "She just looks like someone I used to know." I was completely distracted for the rest of the afternoon. Could it really be her? And if it was, how did she get here from a novel? I turned the questions over and over in my mind before finally deciding to just let it go. Couldn't be her. It had to be a coincidence. I threw myself back into my work, and the next time I looked up, it was already 5 o'clock. I got up to use the restroom. As I was about to leave the stall, I heard some of my coworkers talking and laughing just outside. "Did you see the look on Ethan's face?" One of them snickered. He was practically drooling, staring at the new CEO like he'd never seen a woman before. "I know, right?" Another one chimed in. "As if she would ever notice a guy like him. Talk about punching above your weight. He should keep dreaming. I heard he's got something going on with his old manager, too," a third voice added. "No way he got promoted that fast without sleeping his way up." I'd heard enough. I slammed the stall door open. The three of them stared at me, shocked into silence. I looked at the three of them, my voice cold. "You know, spreading malicious rumors is a great way to get reported to HR. Management hates this kind of gossip. I got promoted because I work my ass off and deliver results, unlike some people who just slack off all day. You don't actually think they haven't noticed, do you?" Their faces turned red with anger, and they glared at me like they wanted to tear me apart. One of them, a hothead named Kevin, yelled, "So what if we are? At least we're not delusional enough to think we have a shot with the new CEO. You really think she'd look twice at a guy like you? That's a joke. I heard she's already engaged to someone 1,000,000 times better looking than you." I didn't bother arguing. I just pushed past them and walked out. Back at my desk, I focused on my work and managed to finish up just before closing time. I stood up to stretch, and my manager walked over, rapping his knuckles on my desk. "Ethan," he said, his expression serious, "the CEO wants to see you." I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. What could the CEO possibly want with me? I walked nervously to the CEO's office on the top floor and knocked. A voice from inside called for me to enter. It sounded exactly like Chloe's, so much so that for a second, I almost believed it was her. I shook the ridiculous thought from my head and opened the door. "Ms. Sterling? You wanted to see me?" She looked up from a file on her desk, and her words rooted me to the spot. "Ethan Hayes," she said, "was playing dead fun for you?" I stood there, completely frozen, staring at her. It really was her, the Chloe from the novel. But I couldn't let her know that I knew. I swallowed hard. "Ms. Sterling, I'm not sure what you mean," I said carefully. "If there's nothing else, I should probably get back to my desk. I wouldn't want people to get the wrong idea." Chloe let out a short, humorless laugh. She stood up from her chair, walked around the desk, and slowly advanced on me. I backed away nervously until my back hit the wall. Her face drew closer and closer to mine, and I quickly turned my head away. I could feel her warm breath on my neck as she spoke, her voice soft. "Ethan, did you know that you clench your fists whenever you lie?" My eyes widened in surprise, and I quickly forced my hands to relax. I took a deep breath. "Ms. Sterling," I said, my voice cold, "if that's all, I have work to do." I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "It's after 6, she said with a small smile. I stopped and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 6:30. I pulled my arm free. "I have to work late," I said stiffly. The moment I was out of her office, my shoulders slumped. I had been planning to treat myself to a nice dinner tonight after working late for a solid month. So much for that. By the time I finished my work and got home, it was already 9. I showered and got into bed, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. How did Chloe follow me out of the novel? If she could get out, could my parents from that world get out, too? The questions buzzed around in my head with no answers. Suddenly, I sat bolt upright in bed. It has to be the system. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. Only the system had the power to bring Chloe to the real world. After all, the system was responsible for me, too. But wasn't Chloe the female protagonist of the novel? If the main character just left, how could the story possibly go on? I switched on the lamp, got out of bed, and pulled the novel out of my desk drawer. I flipped to the last page. The ending was the same. Chloe and Julian lived happily ever after. That ending was a lie. Since I lived alone, I yelled out into the empty apartment, "System, Are you there? The room remained silent. A wave of disappointment washed over me as I lay back down. The system was gone. Who else could give me answers? Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an iMessage notification. I opened the app and saw a friend request from a familiar name, Chloe Sterling. I gave a wry smile and tapped accept. Even if I declined, I knew she'd just find another way. After all, she had apparently come all this way for me. There was no point in delaying the inevitable. I stared at the empty chat window, waiting to see what she wanted. But no message came. I went to work the next day with dark circles under my eyes. My bad luck must have been holding, because the first person I saw was Kevin. Now that the gloves were off, his dislike for me was obvious. I slowed down, not wanting to share an elevator with him, but then I heard someone behind me say, "Good morning, Miss Sterling," and I quickly hurried into the elevator with Kevin. After all, it was just the two of us. Kevin looked me up and down and sneered, "Great, sharing an elevator with you really ruins my morning." I glanced back at him. The feeling's mutual. I can't imagine anyone enjoys being in a confined space with you. I scoffed and stepped out of the elevator as soon as the doors opened. After I'd been working for a bit, my manager came in, looking pleased. "All right, everyone, listen up. Tomorrow is the annual company retreat. It's for all employees who have been here for at least a year. We're going to the Cypress Ridge Resort. We'll meet at the main entrance at 7 a.m. sharp to take the bus. Let me know if you can't make it." I hesitated. I wanted to go, but I didn't want to see Chloe. I saw a few people go into his office to beg off, so I went in too. "Hey, Mark," I said quietly. "I was just wondering, is the CEO going on this retreat?" Mark glanced at me. "The senior executives are having their own retreat at a different location." I breathed a sigh of relief. Just as I was about to say something, Kevin appeared out of nowhere. "Still trying to get information on the CEO?" he said loudly. "Don't you know your place? What, you hoping to marry into money? Keep dreaming." The entire office turned to look. My face hardened. "You've got a lot of nerve," I shot back. "You spend all day sucking up to the bosses. Weren't you the one who accidentally spilled coffee all over Ms. Albright the other day, which led to her husband coming here and making a scene? Sounds to me like you're the one with ulterior motives." Kevin was so stunned he couldn't speak. Then his face twisted with rage. "You son of a bitch," he yelled, and lunged at me. I sidestepped him easily, and he went sprawling on the floor. I gave him one last cold look before walking back to my desk. True to Mark's word, Chloe was nowhere to be seen on the bus the next day, and I finally relaxed. 2 hours later, we arrived at the resort. I always get a little carsick on buses, but I hadn't expected it to be this bad. The resort staff checked us into our rooms. I dropped off my bag and went down to the lobby to get some water. And that's when I saw a familiar figure standing at the front desk. I stopped and frowned. It was Chloe. Hadn't Mark said the executives were going somewhere else? What was she doing here? I grabbed my water and quickly turned to leave, but I bumped right into a passing waiter and went down hard. As I got to my feet, about to check my aching wrist, a soft, pale hand took mine and began to examine it for me. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice gentle. I watched her, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks as she carefully checked my wrist. I felt a flush of embarrassment and tried to pull my hand away. Chloe frowned slightly. "Don't move," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "Let me see." I stopped struggling. A moment later, I regretted it. She was my boss, nothing more. Why was I letting her do this? I pulled my hand free. "You don't have to worry, Miss Sterling," I said coolly. "I'm fine." I turned and walked toward the elevators, only to have the doors slide shut right in my face. As I waited, I sensed someone come to stand beside me. I didn't have to look to know it was Chloe. I pretended not to notice, pulling out my phone to answer a text from a coworker. When I finished, I looked up at the floor indicator and noticed out of the corner of my eye how close she was standing. I turned my head and found her face was just inches from mine. "Who are you texting so intently?" she asked, her voice low. I put my phone away. "No one important, Miss Sterling," I said, and stepped into the elevator as the doors opened. Chloe followed me in. The moment she did, the space seemed to shrink, and I felt a sudden tightness in my chest. I stared blankly at the floor numbers, praying for the ride to be over quickly. Suddenly, she took my hand and pressed something into my palm. I looked down at the small box and frowned. "What's this?" She smiled. "Dramamine. You told me once you get sick on buses." I pressed my lips together and quietly pocketed the box. The elevator dinged, and I quickly stepped out, walking briskly down the hall until I was sure she wasn't following me. Only then did I stop and let out a breath. I stood in the hallway, staring at the box of medicine, a complicated feeling stirring inside me. When we were first married, I had tried to tell her about my likes and dislikes, my little habits, but she had always been so indifferent that I eventually gave up. I never imagined she had remembered any of it. I took a deep breath, pocketed the medicine, and started toward my room. Just as I did, I heard a man's panting voice coming from the nearby stairwell. "We can't, Ms. Albright, not out here." My eyebrows shot up. If I wasn't mistaken, that was Kevin's voice. This could be interesting. I crept silently toward the partially open stairwell door, pulled out my phone, and hit record. A woman's sultry voice replied from inside. "It's fine, darling. The company booked this whole floor. Everyone's down at the beach by now. We're all alone." I was shocked. That voice, it was Ms. Albright, the vice president Kevin had accidentally spilled coffee on. The woman was in her 40s. So I had been right. They were having an affair. Kevin's voice grew deeper and hoarser, and I felt a wave of disgust. After a few moments, the heavy breathing finally subsided. "Ms. Albright," Kevin said, "I thought you said you weren't coming on this retreat. What changed?" "Who knows what got into that Chloe Sterling," Ms. Albright replied, her voice laced with annoyance. "She suddenly decided we all needed to strengthen employee cohesion and made us come on the same trip." Then I heard Kevin's voice again. "Ms. Albright, about that Ethan Hayes, I think he might know about us. He really laid into me the other day. You have to do something about him." I froze, momentarily speechless. The nerve of him playing the victim. "Don't you worry," Ms. Albright cooed. "I'll find an excuse to get him fired. Now let's go join the others." Hearing footsteps approaching the door, I quickly and quietly ducked around the corner. I waited until their voices faded down the hall before letting out a breath, pocketing my phone, and heading back to my room. It was only then that I realized I'd forgotten the water I'd gone downstairs for in the first place. I was just about to head back down when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find a member of the hotel staff. "Can I help you?" I asked. She handed me a bottle of water. "Ms. Sterling sent this up for you," she said with a smile. I took it, stunned. Long after she had gone, I was still wondering about it. Had Chloe always been this considerate? How had I never seen it before? Half an hour after taking the medicine, I felt much better, so I went down to join my friends for a water gun fight on the beach. We played right up until dinner, and even then we weren't ready to stop. One of my friends, Olivia, came over and slung an arm over my shoulder. "The group chat says there's a bonfire on the beach tonight. We should go." I nodded, and a few of our other coworkers agreed. The bonfire party was in full swing, and our group eventually split up. I was heading for a seating area to take a break when a foot shot out and tripped me. I lost my balance and started falling, headfirst, toward the fire. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the heat, but it never came. A pair of strong hands caught me. I opened my eyes to see Chloe's face, her expression a mixture of fear and anger. "Are you okay?" she asked, pulling me to my feet. "Did you get burned?" I shook my head. Chloe let out a breath of relief, then her eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on someone in the crowd. I followed her line of sight and saw Kevin, his eyes darting away guiltily. So it was him. He had tripped me. I clenched my fists and walked over to him. "Kevin," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "you just tried to trip me into a fire. Do you have any idea what could have happened?" Kevin blustered. "What are you talking about? There are 100 people here. You tripped over your own feet. Don't try to blame me." He seemed to gain confidence as he spoke. "You say I tripped you? Where's your proof? You can't just go around accusing people." I was furious at his blatant lies. I scanned the area, but there were no security cameras. Everyone around us, even my own coworkers, were just watching like it was a show. I couldn't believe that in this whole crowd, not a single person was willing to back me up. I stood there, completely alone, as Kevin smirked in triumph. Ms. Albright glared at me. "Ethan Hayes, I never realized you were the type to make baseless accusations. I suppose you blame others for your own mistakes at work, too." She looked at me with disdain. "Let me be clear. This company has no room for employees with such a lack of integrity. I suggest you pack your things and leave." Suddenly, a familiar figure stepped in front of me. It was Chloe. "I saw you stick your foot out and trip him," she said, her voice like ice. "What is there to deny? If anyone here has a lack of integrity, it's you." "And I agree with Ms. Albright. You're fired." The color drained from Kevin's face, his bravado vanishing in an instant. "Ms. Sterling, it must have been a misunderstanding. I would never, maybe I just wasn't looking where I was going and he tripped. But you can't say it was on purpose. I've been with this company for years. You can't just fire a loyal employee." Ms. Albright chimed in to defend him. "She's right, Ms. Sterling. This retreat is supposed to be about building morale. A rash decision could be very damaging." Chloe turned her cold gaze on Ms. Albright. "Are you threatening me?" Ms. Albright just smiled. Of course not. I looked at them both, then stepped out from behind Chloe, holding up my phone. You're already having an affair with your subordinate in violation of company policy, I said calmly. I'd say you dare to do quite a lot. With that, I pressed play, and the recording from the stairwell echoed across the beach. A shocked murmur went through the crowd as everyone turned to stare at Ms. Albright and Kevin. I can't believe it. She's old enough to be his mother, someone whispered. He's the disgusting one, another person muttered. She's a married woman, for God's sake. They should both be fired, someone else declared. Kevin stood there, pale and speechless. Chloe fixed her gaze on Ms. Albright. You violated company policy and abused your authority. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Ms. Albright, who had been so tender with Kevin in the stairwell, now turned on him with a look of pure venom. It was you, she shrieked. You seduced me. I never would have done any of this if it weren't for you. Kevin stared at her, aghast. How can you say that? But Ms. Albright ignored him, turning to Chloe with a pleading look. Ms. Sterling, it wasn't my fault. He seduced me. Women can be led astray, you know. I've given so many years to this company. Please, just give me one more chance. I looked at Chloe, a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach. Chloe's patience had clearly run out. I won't say it again, she said. After this retreat is over, I don't want to see either of you at my company ever again. Ms. Albright's face contorted with rage. You really think you can run this company without me, Sterling? You're delusional. Fine, I'll go. But don't come crawling back to me when everything falls apart. I watched, stunned, as she stormed off, dragging Kevin with her. Chloe turned to me. Come on, she said. Let's go. I fell into step beside her. You didn't fire her just because of me, did you? I asked tentatively. She glanced at me. What do you think? I slowed to a stop. I don't know, I said, hesitating. You wouldn't do that for me. Back in the novel, you were always so cold to me. Why would you? My train of thought was broken when she took my hand in hers. I stared at our intertwined fingers, stunned. What are you doing? She pulled me closer so we were standing face to face. It's my fault, she said, her eyes searching mine. I was so cold to you that I destroyed your confidence. I fired her because I couldn't stand to see her treat you that way. I pushed her away gently. What are you doing? I hissed. Everyone's watching. The next thing I knew, she had her arms around me, holding me in a tight embrace. I came to this world for you, she whispered. I was at a loss for words. After a long moment, I gently pushed her away. You should go back, I said quietly. My life is here, my friends, my family. But you, everyone you've ever known, everything you've ever cared about, it's all back there. Are you just going to leave it all behind? She didn't answer, just stared at me. Her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't name. I turned away, trying to sound casual. Go home, Chloe. You came, you saw me. We can call it even for you missing my deathbed. Your family and friends are waiting for you. Suddenly, she was hugging me again, her arms wrapped tightly around me. You don't get to decide what I want, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I was wrong. I let my family and Julian get in the way of our relationship, and I am so sorry for that. But I hate that you just left. We could have talked, we could have worked through it, but you chose that. I didn't know what to say. If you hate me so much, I finally managed. Why are you hugging me? She buried her face in my chest. Because I love you, she said, her voice muffled by my shirt. I scoffed. A little late for that, don't you think? Where was all this love before? I felt a confusing mix of emotions, happiness warring with a deep-seated resentment. I gently pried her arms off me. Okay, that's enough. I'm going back to my room. She grabbed my hand again, trying to lace her fingers through mine. I made a fist, stopping her. I don't want to start rumors at work, I said evenly. Her expression cooled. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Is there someone else? I looked at her, surprised. Was she jealous? I wasn't about to give in that easily. I pulled my wrist free and started walking away. She caught up to me, of course, but she glared at me the whole time, looking like a woman scorned. I finally stopped, unable to take it anymore. If you keep looking at me like that, I said with a sigh, what do you think people from work are going to say? She just stared at me, silent. I sighed. Look, can you just stop? Think about it. If rumors start spreading about me and the CEO, how do you think that's going to look? A flicker of frustration crossed her face. Then we'll be discreet, she said. I snorted. Discreet about what? There's nothing between us. We've held hands, she said, a wounded look in her eyes. We've hugged, and you're saying there's nothing between us. I nodded. You haven't even tried to win me over. Why should I be with you? She paused, Then a slow smile spread across her face. So you want me to pursue you? I didn't say anything, which was as good as an agreement. I was willing to give her a chance. I mean, who wouldn't be, when their ex gives up her entire life to follow them to another world? The corner of her mouth twitched into a smile. You pursued me before, she said without hesitation. Now it's my turn. I nodded. It's getting late. I'm going back to my room. We should probably go in separately to avoid gossip. You wait a few minutes. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes screamed, overkill. I ignored it. So that's the plan. Wait here for 10 minutes. She started to protest, but as I turned to look at her, she leaned in and kissed me quickly on the cheek. Satisfied, she smiled. Okay, you can go now. I couldn't help the small smile that played on my lips as I walked back to the hotel alone. The next morning, I woke to the gentle sea breeze. I opened my eyes to a beautiful ocean view. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Are you awake? I got you breakfast. If you are, I can have room service bring it up. I texted back a quick yes and went to wash up. I had just come out of the bathroom when there was a knock at the door. I took the breakfast tray from the staff and sent Chloe a quick thank you text. I was halfway through my meal when there was another knock. I opened the door to find Olivia, one of my coworkers. Ethan, have you eaten yet? A few of us are going down to the dining hall. I shook my head. You guys go on without me. I'm already eating. Olivia looked surprised. But breakfast service doesn't start until 8. Where did you get food? This place is in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing for miles. I hesitated, not sure how to explain, and just nodded. She gave me a thumbs up. You're an early bird. If I hadn't been up half the night playing poker, I might have done the same. Anyway, I'll see you later. I closed the door, but I'd barely taken another bite when there was another knock. I took a deep breath, swallowed, and opened the door again. It was Chloe. Seeing the look on my face, she asked quietly, Are you unhappy to see me? I didn't say anything, just pulled her inside and shut the door. No, I explained. It's just, I keep getting interrupted. It's annoying. So you're annoyed with me, she said, her voice flat. I sighed. Chloe, if you're going to be like that, you can leave. She immediately went quiet and sat on the edge of the bed, watching me eat. When I was finished, I finally asked, So, what did you want? I just wanted to see you, she said quietly. Sometimes, when I can't see you, I get this feeling that you've disappeared again. A pang of guilt went through me. For the first time in a long time, I smiled at her. Okay, I said, I'll stay in with you this morning then. How does that sound? She just nodded, but I saw the corners of her mouth lift in a small smile. I threw the empty containers in the trash and lay down on the bed. Chloe lay down beside me, turning on her side to face me. I could feel her intense gaze on me even without looking. I reached over and covered her eyes with my hand, staring up at the ceiling as an old memory, an image the system had shown me, played in my mind. That time at the hospital, I asked suddenly, Why were you massaging Julian's ankle? She answered without hesitation. The nurse thought I was his girlfriend. She just handed me an ice pack, told me to rub it on his ankle, and left. I didn't have my assistant with me, so I did it myself. But honestly, while I was doing it, all I could think about was the time you pulled me out of that fire. As she spoke, she took my hand from her face and kissed it. You hurt your own ankle carrying me that day, she continued. All I could think was, if it hurt him this much, how did you manage to carry me for miles without saying a word? It hit me then. While she was helping Julian, she had been thinking of me. I really had misunderstood her. She looked at me, a question in her eyes. How did you know about that, anyway? I was quiet for a moment. Do you know about the system? I asked. She gave me a curious look. The system? You mean this? She held out her hand, and in her palm was a small, glowing orb. I sat up, shocked. That's the system? How did you even find it? She sat up too, giving the orb a little shake. It appeared in front of me and introduced itself, she said simply. So that's how you got here? I asked. She nodded. I reached out and poked the glowing ball, but it didn't do anything. What's wrong with it? I asked, confused. I knocked it unconscious, she said matter-of-factly. I looked at her with newfound respect. I couldn't even figure out what it was, and you knocked it out. You really are the main character. She put the orb away and looked at me seriously. Did you leave me because of the system? I nodded. It told me that you and Julian were the ones who were meant to be, that I was just a side character. It kept showing me visions of you with him, how much you cared for him, how you doted on him. It said that as long as he was around, you would never truly see me. Saying it all out loud, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Chloe's expression turned cold. She clenched her fist around the glowing orb. How dare it try to drive us apart, she said through gritted teeth. I snorted. Well, if you hadn't given Julian so many openings, the system wouldn't have had anything to work with. She buried her face in my chest, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist. I know, she whispered. It was all my fault. I blocked his number long before I came here. Remembering all the times she had hurt me, I felt a surge of anger and pushed her away. When I asked you why you married me, I said, feigning anger, you told me it was a fair trade for saving your life. She gave a wry smile. We were fighting. I just said it to hurt you. The truth is, I started falling for you not long after we started dating. I gave her a cold look. And what about Julian? Can you honestly tell me you never felt anything for him? She raised her hand as if taking an oath. I swear to you, I never did. I crossed my arms and rolled my eyes. I asked you back then if you could say that with a clear conscience, and you said nothing. That was answer enough for me. She took a deep breath. The first time I met him, he was just a kid. To me, he's still just a kid. How could I have feelings for him? I was silent because I had already explained to you a dozen times that I was only looking out for him as a favor to Tessa, but you never believed me, so I just gave up trying. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I eyed her coolly. Then what about the time you let him ride in my passenger seat? I saw you, Chloe. I saw you tell Julian, don't worry, I won't let him know. Chloe looked at me, her expression one of pure confusion. What are you talking about? I would never say that. The entire time he stayed with us, he always sat in the back. The passenger seat was always for you. I was still suspicious. Was the system showing me a fake image? Then, are you willing to confront it about it? When it wakes up, Chloe said without hesitation, I'll ask it right in front of you. I pressed on. What about the time Julian had to help you home? He said you took a drink for him and got so drunk you were clinging to him and wouldn't let go. Chloe looked down, her voice soft. He told me he was allergic to alcohol, and I didn't want him to have a reaction at a company event, so I drank it for him. And I specifically told my assistant to take me home, not him. I lay back on the bed and sighed. Forget it. It's clear I can't compete with him. You even forced me to apologize to him at the office. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. She took my hand. I was wrong to jump to conclusions about that. But I wasn't worried about him, Ethan. I was worried about you. I was afraid you were letting your anger get the best of you, and I wanted you to be the bigger person and take responsibility. I rolled over, turning my back to her. When I didn't say anything, she moved closer. What's going through your head now? I turned back to face her, my gaze steady. You don't really love me all that much, do you? Her brow furrowed, her expression serious. How can you say that? I let out a bitter laugh. You know now that I had nothing to do with those rumors about Julian at the office. But what if I had? Would you have loved me any less? A look of weary sadness crossed her face. Why would you even think that? She sighed. Even when I thought you were responsible, all I did was try to fix it. It never changed how I felt about you. Besides, she added softly, why else would I have followed you into this world? She had a point. The knot of anger in my chest began to loosen. Fine, I said, but I'm still not happy. She gently pinched my cheek. And what are you unhappy about now? She asked with a sigh. I huffed. I need you to be on my side. Always. Right or wrong, you're with me. It's not okay for you to make me feel second best. I looked her straight in the eye. You have terrible boundaries when it comes to Julian Croft. If that ever happens again with any other guy, we are done. She fell silent. Seeing her hesitation, a cold dread washed over me. Could she really not let him go? The next moment, she was holding me tight, her voice hoarse. Don't worry, she whispered fiercely. I lost you once. I will not let it happen again. Her tone was deadly serious. I will not make the same mistake twice. Just like that, all my anger vanished. I couldn't help but smile. It seemed my little death scene had been pretty effective after all. She held on for a long time, so long I started to wonder if she'd fallen asleep. But when I shifted, her arms only tightened around me. Finally, I had to pat her on the back. Okay, that's enough. We should probably get some lunch. But I just want to stay here with you, she murmured into my chest. I realized then that I've always been a sucker for the soft approach. This clingy, affectionate Chloe was infinitely more appealing than the ice queen she used to be. Well, I heard myself say, I guess having lunch in the room wouldn't be the worst thing. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my friends to let them know I wouldn't be joining them. Chloe leaned over my shoulder, her lips close to my ear. That woman who came by this morning, she whispered. I don't like her. I looked at her warily. Don't you dare start anything. She was clearly not happy about that. She pouted. Why not? She has a crush on you. Do you like her back? Am I not enough for you? I stared at her, dumbfounded. How would you know she has a crush on me when I don't even know? Her face went cold, and she sat on the bed in stony silence. I had to explain patiently. She's just a work friend, Olivia. Her room is near mine, so they sent her to get me. It's not like that. Besides, how did you know she came by this morning? Were you camping outside my door? She was quiet for a moment before admitting softly, I just came by a few times. I wasn't guarding it. I put my head in my hands. What's the difference? Chloe, you can't do that. What if someone saw you? Why would that be bad? She countered. I don't care what other people think. I didn't know what to say to that. She just stared at me, her expression desolate. Ever since you died, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I stopped caring about anything. My heart skipped a beat. Something flickered at the edge of my thoughts, but it was gone before I could catch it. I took a deep breath and shook my head. I don't believe that, and I need to have friends. You have to learn to control this possessiveness. She looked down, silent, and for some reason, she looked so pitiful it made my heart ache. An alarm bell went off in my head. Feeling sorry for her was a slippery slope. I couldn't afford to go soft. With that in mind, I gave her a sharp look. If you can't agree to that, then I'm going to go have lunch with my friends. She finally relented. I understand, she said quietly. I stroked her cheek. Don't be upset. Now go on, order us some food. I'm starving. She pulled out her phone and made a call. I need a delivery from the Golden Lantern. Get the sweet and sour rockfish, the tea-smoked shrimp. I realized she was listing all of my favorite dishes. When she hung up, her eyes landed on me. What are you smiling about? She asked. I grinned. You remembered all my favorites. She nodded. You, she said softly, and everything about you. I could never forget. My smile widened. Where did you learn to be so sweet? I teased. She just looked at me, her voice impossibly soft. So sweet, she murmured. Want a taste? I stared at her, surprised, as she leaned in closer and closer, covering my eyes with one hand as her lips met mine. And so, on the second day of the company retreat, I ended up spending the entire day in my room with Chloe. It made me wonder if this hadn't been her plan all along. That evening, Olivia knocked on my door. You've been cooped up in here all day, she said, looking concerned. Are you feeling sick? Seeing her genuine concern, Chloe's words echoed in my head. She has a crush on you. Could she really? Olivia looked at me quizzically. Why are you staring at me like that? Is there something on my face? Cleared my throat. No, nothing. I'm not sick. I still wasn't sure if Chloe was right, and I didn't want to make things awkward by jumping to conclusions. Olivia smiled. Well, that's a relief. I'll see you tomorrow then. After she left, I washed up and got into bed. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Getting ready for bed? We have to be up at 6. Want me to come get you? I declined. Even though most people wouldn't be up at 6, it was better to be safe than sorry. At 6 the next morning, my alarm went off. By 6:30, I was at the resort entrance, meeting Chloe. We drove to a small town a few miles away to get some breakfast. The town was right on the coast, and the streets were lined with vendors selling fresh seafood from the morning's catch. Let's try some of the local food, I said, pulling Chloe toward a stall. Those oyster fritters look amazing. She smiled and nodded. Okay. I took her hand and led her over. The elderly woman running the stall beamed at us. What a handsome couple you two make, she said with a chuckle. Your girlfriend is lovely. I glanced at Chloe and saw a small smile playing on her lips. Before I could say anything, she turned to the woman and said, We'll take 500. The old woman's eyes went wide, and then her face broke into a huge grin. She immediately started calling over the other vendors to help fill the massive order. I quickly pulled her aside. What are you doing? I whispered. We can't possibly eat that many. It'll be a waste. She just shook her head. It won't go to waste. We'll bring the leftovers back for everyone at the office. That seemed reasonable enough. Chloe called her assistant and told her to come pick them up, and then we set off to explore the town. I munched on my fritter as we walked. I glanced over and saw that Chloe was still just holding hers. Aren't you going to eat that? I asked. She shook her head. I'm saving it for you. I frowned. I don't want yours. I want to eat them with you. At that, she finally took a bite. I smiled. Is it good? She gave a prim nod and took another bite. I was humming to myself as we walked, when I saw a familiar-looking figure disappear into the local clinic up ahead. Hey, I said, turning to Chloe. That guy who just went in there looked familiar. Did you see him? She shook her head. I shrugged it off and we continued on our way. We spent the rest of the morning wandering around town, finally stopping for lunch at a small noodle shop. The seafood noodles were incredible. I joked that Chloe should try to get the recipe, but when she asked, the owner flatly refused. It's a family secret, he said. In the end, Chloe bought the recipe from him for $50,000. I think this dish has a lot of potential, she explained. I might add it to the menu at one of my restaurants. I couldn't really argue with that. We had parked on a wider street on the outskirts of town, since the alleys were too narrow for the car. As we walked back, I looked at the old buildings with their peeling paint and ivy-covered walls, and a wave of nostalgia washed over me. I grew up in a town like this, I said quietly. My grandmother raised me. These alleys, they look just like the ones I remember. She looked at me, her expression serious. You've never told me about your childhood. I could only manage a wry smile. My parents were always working, so they left me with my grandmother. When they finally made some money and took me back, they couldn't stand the way I'd been raised. They were always criticizing me. I hated being home. I always felt like they didn't love me. Then, my mom died in the car accident that I survived. I had to grow up fast after that. My grandmother passed away a few years later, and then it was just my dad. He blames me for my mom's death. He lives in a nursing home now. To be honest, there's not much keeping me in this world. The only reason I'm still here is because I feel guilty about my dad. I still have to pay his bills, you know? It's okay, Chloe said softly. You have me now. We can go get a marriage license. We can be a family. I felt a lump form in my throat. What are you talking about? You're not even my girlfriend yet, and you've only been pursuing me for a few days. But I want you to be mine now, she said with a sigh. I snorted. I'm not a possession. I belong to myself. She didn't say anything. I never realized I could be so argumentative. Back at the resort, I found some friends and tried my hand at surfing. After swallowing half the ocean, I gave up and collapsed onto a lounge chair, only to find Chloe lying in the one next to me. After a quick scan to make sure no one was watching, I gave her a playful wink. Enjoying the show? She just hummed in response and reached out to wipe a drop of water from my face. Don't, I said quickly, stopping her hand. I've got it. That's too familiar. Someone might see. She looked at me for a long moment, then pursed her lips. I wish we were the only two people in the company. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Please don't say such childish things, Ms. Sterling. She had gotten a lot bolder since coming to this world. I'm allowed to be childish with you, she said, completely unfazed. I was at a loss for words, so I changed the subject. So this pursuit of yours, what's your plan? How do you want me to pursue you? She countered. Should I do it the way you pursued me? I thought back to all the over-the-top things I had done to win her over, and I cringed. Honestly, I asked, how did you ever put up with me? I didn't, she said, just as honestly. And my friends made sure you knew it. That was true. I thought back to her 21st birthday party with a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. I had crashed the party to give her a gift, and she had knocked it right out of my hands. I don't want anything from you, she had said, looking at me with pure disgust. Her friends had all gathered around, mocking me for being so shameless. I had stormed off in anger, but I decided to be the bigger person and wait for her in the hotel lobby. And that decision ended up getting me a wife. During the party, Chloe had found out that her father had arranged a marriage for her behind her back. After a furious argument with him, she had stormed out, gotten in her car, and sped off, crashing it just a few minutes later. I had been following her, and I watched, horrified, as the car burst into flames. I didn't even think. I just ran and pulled her from the wreckage, burning my arm badly in the process. I can still remember it perfectly. She was covered in blood, barely conscious, but she managed to whisper in my ear, "Ethan Hayes, I accept." I was so happy I ran 100 yards on my injured ankle before the pain finally forced me to stop. I suddenly found myself curious. What were you thinking, back then, when I pulled you from the fire? She glanced at me, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. It's okay, I said gently. You can tell me. I won't get mad. She seemed to believe me. At the time, she began, I just thought if my father is going to force me into a marriage, then I'll choose my own husband just to spite him. It's my life, and I'll be the one to decide who I marry. And then you saved my life, risking your own to do it. So you fell for me right then and there? I guessed, a hopeful excitement rising in me. She shook her head. I thought you saved my life. I owed you, so I might as well choose you. My face fell. So it was just about repaying a debt? She looked at my expression and chose her words carefully. You did say you wouldn't get mad. I scoffed and stood up. And you believed me? I turned to leave, but then I remembered something and stopped. At the same moment, she called out, Wait! I spoke first. So when did you actually start to fall for me? Her expression turned serious. I was lying when I said it was just about the debt. I agreed to date you because of it, to give you a chance. But I fell in love with you while we were together. I had never met anyone like you. After you saved me, I stopped seeing you as just an annoyance, and everything you did, it was new and fascinating to me. My heart soared, and I sat back down, eager to hear more. The longer we were together, the more my father pressured me to leave you. But when he finally demanded that I break up with you, my first thought was, absolutely not. I listened, a wide grin spreading across my face. If she hadn't told me herself, I never would have guessed all that had been going on behind that icy exterior of hers. Then a thought occurred to me, and my smile faded. If you like me so much, why didn't you ever say anything? You let me twist in the wind for so long. She looked apologetic. You were the first man I had ever been with. My parents' marriage was a business arrangement. They were never in love. I had no idea how a real relationship was supposed to work. I was too proud and stubborn, and I said things to hurt you because I didn't know what else to do. I reluctantly accepted her explanation. All right, I said with a nod. It's all in the past now. I've never been one to dwell on the past. We had finally cleared the air. All that was left was to see where we went from here. After the retreat, I dove back into my work, and Chloe really did start pursuing me. She had all my meals delivered to my desk and sent a bouquet of red roses to my apartment every single day. I was pleased that she never showed up in person. I assumed she understood that I wanted to keep things quiet at the office. Then I realized she was even busier than I was. Sometimes I'd work until 10 at night, and when I left, I'd look up and see the lights in the CEO's office were still on. I figured she was swamped, cleaning up the mess Ms. Albright had left behind. So, on the third weekend after the retreat, I went over to her place early in the morning. Luckily, she had taken me there after work one day and added my fingerprint to her security system, so I was able to let myself in. There was no strange man waiting inside, thank God, but there was a glowing orb zipping around the living room, knocking things over and generally making a mess. It was like having a hyperactive ghost for a pet. When it saw me, the orb flickered erratically. It's all your fault, it buzzed. You're the one who stole the female lead. It seemed the system was still pretty bent out of shape about Chloe coming to the real world, but I wasn't about to take the blame. Hey, I did what you told me to, I said to the orb. I left her. Whatever happened after that is on you. You bastard, it retorted. If it weren't for you, she never would have been able to bully me like this. Before the system could continue its tirade, Chloe opened her bedroom door. She was wearing a silk robe, and the sight of her collarbones made me completely forget about the angry orb. Your skin is so pale, I said, my voice a little thick. A small smile played on her lips as she pulled the robe tighter, covering herself completely. My collarbones, she said primly, are for my husband's eyes only. I had to laugh. When had she learned to be such a tease? But I wasn't going to fall for it. When I didn't take the bait, she turned to the system. If you're going to call me the female lead, she said, then you will refer to Ethan as the male lead. I will not, the system declared defiantly. Your destined partner is Julian Croft. Before it could say another word, Chloe snatched it out of the air and squeezed. Are you, she said, her voice dangerously low, or are you not? Ow, 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 the system squealed, its light flickering weakly. I'll say it, male lead. There, happy? Chloe grunted in satisfaction and loosened her grip. One more thing, she said. Those visions you showed Ethan, were they fake? The system went silent, its light pulsing nervously. It was clearly guilty. Well, Chloe demanded. Some of them might have been enhanced, the system mumbled. Using AI. A flash of fury crossed Chloe's face, and her grip tightened. The system shrieked in pain. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I can open the portal. I can send you back to the novel world. I stood there, stunned. Then a wave of joy washed over me. If we could go back, I could see my parents and my sister again. But then my smile faltered. If we went back, would we ever be able to return here? Should we go back now? Chloe asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. I looked at her outstretched hand and said nothing. After a long moment, I finally spoke. I can't. My dad, he still needs me to pay for his care. My words hung in the air between us, and Chloe froze. I couldn't bring myself to look at her face, so I stared at the floor instead. Suddenly, her hands were on my face, gently tilting my head up. It's okay, she said softly. Then I'll stay here with you. A warmth spread through my chest, and I pulled her into a hug. I can bring you back, the system chirped suddenly. My eyes lit up. I grabbed Chloe's hand. That's perfect. Chloe just smiled at me, her eyes soft. How did you do it? I asked, suddenly curious. How did you get the system to be so obedient? It's willing to just ferry us between worlds. The system sulked in the corner, radiating pure misery. Chloe then told me the whole story. Apparently, after I died, the plot started to go off the rails. The system, in a panic, revealed itself to Chloe. Its biggest mistake was admitting that it was responsible for my death. After that, Chloe basically tortured it until it agreed to bring her to my world. So that was the power of a protagonist. The ability to bend the system to your will. After I had a moment to process that, Chloe had the system open the portal, and we stepped back into the novel world. This time, I was back in my own body. Our house in the novel world was exactly as I remembered it, with one exception. There was a large memorial portrait of me hanging on the living room wall. I stood there, staring at it, feeling incredibly awkward. Chloe took the portrait down. "Well," she said, "we won't be needing this anymore." She took it down to the basement and I took a look around. All of my things were still exactly where I had left them. When she came back up, I asked her about it. She looked at me, her expression soft. "After you were gone, I couldn't accept it. I left everything just as it was. It felt like you were still here with me." My heart ached for her, and I reached out to stroke her cheek. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Ethan," she said, "let's go get married. For real this time." This time, I didn't say no. A year after my supposed death, news broke that Chloe was being seen with a mysterious new man. That was all it took for my father, mother, and sister to show up on her doorstep in the middle of the night. I was woken up by the sound of shouting. I got to the top of the stairs just in time to hear my sister, Natalie, yelling, "Chloe Sterling, how could you do this to Ethan's memory?" My mother's tearful voice followed. "It's only been a year. How could you move on so quickly? My poor boy would be heartbroken if he knew." Then came my father's angry roar. "I was wrong about you, Chloe. Letting my son marry you was the biggest mistake of my life. This was not good." I hurried downstairs. When Natalie saw me, she opened her mouth to yell at me, then stopped, her eyes widening in shock. "You're Ethan?" My parents turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of disbelief and tearful joy. I quickly tried to explain. "I told you I was going away for a while, didn't I? Well, I'm back." They all rushed forward and pulled me into a tight, emotional hug. I was so happy to see them again. Chloe was looking at me with a wounded expression, and I mouthed the word later to her over their shoulders. My family held on for a long time, and eventually, Chloe came and wrapped her arms around all of us, hugging me from behind them. I looked at my family and the woman I loved, all of them here with me, and under the resentful gaze of the little glowing orb in the corner, I couldn't help but smile. My life was finally complete.